Story is an often misunderstood aspect of fighting games, treated poorly by the community who play it and an afterthought to the people who make it. While most fighting game stories are globe-trotting anime adventures or poorly thought out attractions for casuals, fighting game lore is a fascinating thing to some and an embarrassment to others. I happen to fall into both categories, so join me as I regale you with some of the many stories told to us from fighting games. For most people, the Street Fighter 3 series was a blip on the radar. It came and went before anyone really had any time to appreciate it for what it was. Released in the late 90s during a time when 3D graphics were the latest craze and the arcade scene was at its dying breath, Street Fighter 3 arrived from developer Capcom as the pinnacle of 2D sprite-based fighters, perhaps even fighting games themselves. About 20 years too early, that is. Yes, while most of us drool over Third Strike's gorgeous sprites and a mind-blowing Evo moment number 37 today, for the better part of its life the Street Fighter 3 games were the red-headed stepchild of the Street Fighter series, something to be ignored and locked away in a room, away from the eyes of normal people. Basically what I'm saying is that you probably didn't play it until Online Edition came out, and while you at least played Third Strike, you probably didn't play its two predecessors, New Generation and Second Impact. And yes, while both are now readily available as part of the 30th Anniversary Collection, you still probably didn't play them because of how everyone goes gaga over Third Strike and how New Generation was actually the worst game ever made, or how Second Impact is totally the secret best one, but no it actually isn't because it didn't have Makoto, and I'm going off track here. Anyway, whether you're an 09er who had no idea there even was a Street Fighter 3, a Sonic boomer who refuses to play anything that isn't 2, or a newcomer who enjoys Street Fighter 5 and has no idea who half of these people are other than Ryu, I'm going to help explain to you the story of Street Fighter 3 in the off chance Capcom ever decides to move the series past it, which I'm still waiting for by the way. Now, quick thing before I start this video, due to the nature of these older fighting games, the story is a bit fragmented between the game itself and character info books that are almost all entirely in Japanese. So while I'll try my best to stick as closely to the events shown in these games as I can, some parts may not be accurate or I'll have to assume what happened based on what these games tell us. Part 1 of this topic will be covering the events of Second Impact, which is a sort of a do-over of the events of New Generation, with some extra bits added here and there, so don't think I'm skipping a game here. Let's start with everyone's favourite glass of water without any ice in it, Ryu. After beating M. Bison's ass for what feels like the 80th time,
how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love it.
Psycho power.
Ryu bids farewell to his old friend Ken and sets out into the world once again to continue his quest of becoming a true warrior. With Ryu out on the road and Ken living a normal life with his wife Eliza and son Mel, the two's relationship has deteriorated, though they both hope to fight each other again one day. While out on his travels, Ryu hears about a Third World Warrior tournament being organised and decides to enter it as a means to further hone his fighting abilities while also hoping to encounter Ken. Ryu performs well in the tournament, managing to beat the hulking giant Hugo, who has entered the tournament in order to find a suitable tag team partner replacement. Hugo is able to withstand Ryu's Shin Shoryuken super art but is still ultimately defeated. Hugo and his manager Poison try to invite Ryu to be his replacement tag team partner in an upcoming tournament, but Ryu turns them down. Hugo and Poison exit the tournament after their loss and resume their hunt for a new tag team partner. Moving on in the tournament, Ryu eventually encounters the ancient Senjutsu master and hermit Oro. Despite only using one arm in battle, Oro absolutely wrecks Ryu and knocks him out of the tournament. Dismayed at his loss but still wanting to grow stronger, Ryu once again sets out into the world. After hitchhiking a ride to the outskirts of a nearby town, Ryu walks the rest of the way on foot while promising Ken and all the other fighters in the world that he'll keep fighting. Unbeknownst to Ryu at the time, Oro takes a keen interest in him as a potential student and follows him out into the world. Meanwhile, after hearing about Ryu's loss in the tournament, Ken loses interest in taking part and drops out entirely. Returning home to his family in giant yacht with his fucking face on it, Ken is approached by a young man named Sean Matsuda, who wishes to have Ken teach him after Ken saved his life from Shadaloo a couple of years prior. Ken has no interest in training the inexperienced and hot-blooded Sean, telling him to go away several times, but Sean persists again and again. Now annoyed, Ken tells Sean he must go and defeat his best friend Ryu if he is to be trained by Ken, knowing full well that it will take Sean a long time to find Ryu and even longer to beat him. Sean, clueless of Ken's real intent, quickly rushes off and finally leaves Ken in peace. Around this time, Ken begins training his son Mel, who decides he wants to take after Johnny Cage, and EX Medium punches Ken right in the balls, securing his future as an only child. Sean meanwhile resumes his hunt for Ryu, but to no avail. Coming across a mysterious fighter in the mountains, Sean makes the worst mistake of his entire life and challenges him to a fight, assuming the man to be Ryu. What Sean doesn't realise is that this man is not Ryu, but actually Akuma. You know, fucking Akuma. This man. Sean thought this guy was Ken's best friend and sparring partner. Now, I'm not sure if Sean is either A, blind or B, dumb, and judging by some of his win quotes, it might be both, but this man is not Ryu. Anyway, Akuma naturally bodies Sean, but for some reason lets him live. Still not deterred from his dream of studying under Ken, Sean continues his journey, eventually finding Ryu deep in an unknown forest. Sean challenges Ryu to a fight, but is defeated by a single Hadoken. Still refusing to give up and using Ken's words as a motivator, Sean challenges Ryu again and again, but is repeatedly defeated. Ryu, realizing that something is up and that Ken must be involved, pleads with Sean to stop fighting before he gets hurt. Sean eventually concedes defeat to Ryu and returns to Ken empty-handed. Either impressed that Sean actually fought Ryu or desperate to get rid of him again, Ken tells Sean to go away for a year and train before returning and seeing if he's good enough to be taught by him. Sean enthusiastically agrees and returns home to start his training. After being disturbed by Sean, Akuma decides to leave his home in the mountains and sets out to test the worth of the current generation of fighters. Akuma eventually encounters his old rival Ryu and the two face off once again, the two's philosophies on fighting still clashing. The winner of the fight is unknown, but for consistency's sake, let's assume Ryu won and that Akuma once again ran off with his tail between his legs. Akuma decides to hone his power even further, being able to destroy Aya's rock with a single punch. Moving on from the Shotokans and their related characters, let's focus on the characters who have no real ties to each other or the main plot of Street Fighter 3, starting with everyone's favourite gentleman boxer Dudley. Born into a wealthy family who would later lose everything due to a bad business decision, Dudley had trained from an early age to use his fists as a way to get back what he felt was rightfully his family's. After his deceased father's prized car is purchased by an unknown individual, Dudley becomes determined to find the buyer and win it back. Discovering that the buyer is also organising a fighting tournament, Dudley decides to enter it in the hopes of winning and regaining his father's car. Dudley performs well in the tournament but is unable to win. Despite his loss, the tournament's organiser is impressed with Dudley's fighting ability and sense of pride and orders his assistant Colleen to return the car to Dudley. With his goal complete and his father's car back in his possession, Dudley somehow takes it for a test drive while wearing boxing gloves, usual stuff. After leaving her home of Kenya to spread her love of fighting and dancing, Elena hears of the fighting tournament and enters it as a way of making new friends. Elena meets many new people during the tournament, but is ultimately defeated by Hugo. After her loss, Hugo takes an interest in Elena and asks him to be his partner in the upcoming tag team tournament. Elena, wanting to experience wrestling and to please the fans she's gained, accepts and joins Hugo against the team of Mike Hagar and Black Widow. After her loss in the tournament and brief time as a wrestler, Elena is transferred to a high school in Japan where she makes even more friends, inviting them to her home the following summer. Entering the tournament to test their fighting skills, twin brothers Yun and Yang Li make a brief splash before being eliminated. Returning home to the shock and joy of their friends and family, the two resume their particular brand of annoyance by tormenting their neighbours and boasting about their particular brand of kung fu. With the unaffiliated characters out of the way, let's move on to the main course of this game, the Illuminati and their related characters. Returning to the Glade of Ninjas after her time at the Kansuki estate, Ibuki the ninja is sent out on a mission by her clan of the utmost importance. Entering the tournament under the pretense of being a normal fighter, Ibuki manages to infiltrate the tournament organizer's facility and steals a top secret file pertaining to the elusive G project, a series of mysterious experiments. Ibuki is confronted by the tournament organizer, who willingly gives Ibuki the G file, informing her that the access to the file means nothing as the G project itself is already well underway and cannot be stopped. Unnerved by the tournament organizer's words but still having completed her mission, Ibuki exits the tournament and returns home to hand the G-files over to the Glade of Ninjas. While laying on the grass thinking over the events in her head, Ibuki senses a nearby presence and leaps into action, unknowingly launching kunais at her friend Sarai and profusely apologizing to her after being yelled at. Born as the youngest of 4 children, Ilya left his impoverished home in Russia in the hopes of seeking riches and independence. After being coerced by an organisation known as the Illuminati into working for them with the promise of a better life, Ilya was tricked and forced into the G Project, an experimental program designed to create the perfect soldier. His body grossly deformed to stretch beyond its normal limits and the ability to produce electricity, Ilya became Necro. Filled with hatred for the Illuminati but afraid of what they would do to him if he revolted, Necro took part in several missions for the secret society. While kept in the Illuminati's labs, Necro would grow close to a fellow prisoner named Effie. The two would become fast friends and eventually lovers, with the promise of the two escaping and living a life together free of the Illuminati being the only thing driving them forward. Entered into the fighting tournament as a means to test his fighting ability, Necro decided that this was his best chance to betray the Illuminati and flee with Effie. Returning to the laboratory, Necro springs a trap laid by the Illuminati and is left behind to be blown up by the lab's self-destruct sequence. Despite the arrival of Effie to help rescue him, the base still explodes, but the two are able to somehow escape. Riding away on a motorcycle, the two wonder what will happen to them now that they've escaped from the Illuminati, though they are still no doubt in their crosshairs. Deciding to accept whatever comes their way, they boldly ride off into the unknown, free at last. Vice President of the Illuminati and brother to its president, Urien decides to end his life of living in the shadows, working against the brother he hates so much, and challenges him directly for the title of president. Despite being the younger brother, Urien is a talented scientist, spearheading the Illuminati's G project, and a powerful fighter, mastering one of the Illuminati's 66 secret arts, powerful abilities beholden to those powerful enough to use them. Deciding that Mom said it was his turn on the Xbox, Urien is somehow able to defeat his brother and wins the title of president of the Illuminati from him. Now in command of the Illuminati's crisis management units and other aspects of their business front, Urien is then invited to meet the Illuminati's Emperor. Unaware that an Emperor even existed, Urien is horrified to discover that the Emperor is in fact his own brother, who still holds more power over him. Forced to accept that once again his role in the Illuminati is a front for his brother, Urien retreats into the shadows to bide his time. In an unsuspecting apartment in Manhattan, a young man named Alex stands at the bed of his adopted father Tom, who lays in critical condition. As Tom's daughter Patricia weeps by his side, Alex demands to know who attacked his mentor and father figure. Tom at first refuses to divulge this information, worried that Alex's rage will consume him to murder his attacker, saying that the fight was fair and Tom simply lost. Alex refuses to heed Tom's words and vows to gain revenge for his mentor's defeat. Tom reluctantly accepts Alex's drive and gives his blessing for Alex to see the world and track down the attacker. As Tom falls unconscious, he reveals the name of the man who attacked him, the same man who has organised the Third World Warrior tournament, Gil. Driven by Tom's brutal beating at the hands of Gil, Alex enters the tournament and destroys the competition, defeating every opponent he comes across. Alex eventually makes his way to the quarterfinals of the tournament, where he is scheduled to face Oro, but Oro was nowhere to be seen. Unknown to Alex, Oro has already left his home to track down Ryu to be his student, and thus has forfeited his fight. With a bye into the semi-finals of the tournament, Alex continues on and confronts Urien. Alex tries to pull some info out of Urien in order to find out why Gil attacked Tom. Urien becomes incensed at the mere mention of Tom's name and orders Alex to never mention him again. Alex then defeats Urien with ease and continues on to face his brother Gil in the finals. Finally face to face with Tom's attacker, Alex vows to pay back Gil for his assault on his mentor. The two clash in the finals of the tournament and Alex wins. Somehow, Alex, a simple part-time wrestler from New York, defeats the leader of the Illuminati. Expecting Alex to kill him, Gil is surprised when Alex turns to leave, his quest for vengeance complete. As Alex walks away, Gil senses something special about Alex, particularly something that will help him preparing for the coming apocalypse prophesied by Gil's religion. His rage satiated and his journey across the globe complete, Alex returns to his home in Manhattan to see Patricia and the fully healed Tom there to greet him. Alex is shocked at Tom's speedy recovery, but Tom is even more surprised to see how much Alex has grown since the last time they met, feeling that he now has the face of a real man. Alex feels the urge all true warriors feel, decides to once again set out into the world, this time not for revenge, but to face the strongest fighters in the world. Shortly after Alex's victory in the tournament, Gil is attacked by Akuma, who has come to face him after sensing Gil and Alex's power during their fight. Whether Gil let Akuma win or not is unknown, but he is defeated before succumbing to Akuma's Shun Goku Satsu and dying instantly. Dissatisfied with Gil's power, Akuma once again disappears into the unknown. However, Gil uses one of his 66 secret arts to defy death.
Resurrection!
For most people, the Street Fighter 3 series was a blip on the radar. It came and went before anyone really had any time to appreciate it for what it was. Released in the late 90s during a time when 3D graphics were the latest craze, and the arcade scene was at its dying breath, Street Fighter 3 arrived from developer Capcom as the pinnacle of 2D sprite-based fighters, perhaps even fighting games themselves. About 20 years too early, that is. Yes, while most of us drool over Third Strike's gorgeous sprites and a mind-blowing Evo moment number 37, for the better part of its life, the Street Fighter 3 games were the red-headed stepchild of the Street Fighter series. Something to be ignored and locked away in your room, away from the eyes of normal people. I mean, even today it's not as fondly remembered by Capcom or some of the Street Fighter fanbase due to essentially killing the series for almost 10 years, but hey, we'll just look past that. Basically, what I'm saying is that you probably didn't play it until Online Edition came out, at which point you either marveled at its unrivaled beauty and treasured it forever, or you thought, this is what people go apeshit over, and threw that thing in the trash before going back to Super Turbo or Alpha 2 or some other game that's not as good. Anyway, the Phoenix-like rising of Third Strike, which began with the infamous Evil Moment number 37 and ended with the availability of Online Edition, has now lauded it as one of the best fighting games ever made, if not the best, and it now rightfully sits with the other fighting game lords. Anyway, whether you're an 09er who had no idea there even was a Street Fighter 3, a Sonic boomer who refuses to play anything that isn't 2, or a newcomer who enjoys Street Fighter 5 and has no idea who half of these people are other than Ryu, I'm going to help explain to you the story of Street Fighter 3 in the off chance Capcom ever decides to move the series past it, which I'm still waiting for, by the way. Now, quick thing before I start this video, due to the nature of these older fighting games, the story is a bit fragmented between the game itself and character info books that are almost all entirely in Japanese. So while I'll try my best to stick as closely to the events shown in these games as I can, some parts may not be accurate or I'll have to assume what happened based on what these games tell us. Another thing that wasn't as prevalent with New Generation and Second Impact is that multiple endings in Third Strike are seen as non-canon, or their status as being part of the story is questionable at best. I'll make some exceptions based on elements that I feel could possibly be interpreted as being canon, or otherwise worth mentioning, but I'll clarify which endings those are before talking about them. Part 2 of this topic will be covering the events of Third Strike, which takes place 1 year after the events of Second Impact, and which by now you will know is the current final entry in the Street Fighter timeline. So if you come away from this video hoping for these storylines to be continued anytime soon, well, you're in for a bad time. Let's follow the pattern we used in the previous episode, and start with everybody's favourite 2x4, Ryu. 1 year after his loss in the Third World Warrior Tournament at the hands of the I'll kick your ass with one arm tied behind my back Senjutsu master Oro, Ryu has spent the last 12 months honing his craft and competing against warriors across the world. Eventually, Ryu is able to once again meet up with his best friend Ken Masters after not being able to during the tournament. The two have not seen or fought each other for some time, with Ryu's path of becoming a true warrior clashing with Ken's desire of raising a family. Finally reuniting, the two discuss their passions for fighting and agree to one quick fighting match before they once again go their separate ways. The clear winner of the fight is unknown, but it is assumed that Ryu once again defeated Ken, though Ryu's victory is narrow, showing how far the two fighters have come. After saying his goodbyes to Ken, Ryu journeys to a pool underneath a waterfall to rest. While there, Ryu questions the meaning behind being a true warrior and thinks back on his journey as a fighter. While contemplating whether the path he walks is even worth walking, Ryu catches a single falling leaf and decides that while he is not even close to figuring out the answers he seeks, as long as he can move even one of his fingers, he will keep on fighting. After defeating him in the tournament, Oro has spent the last year trying to find Ryu in the hopes that he can take him on as an apprentice, due to Ryu's fighting ability catching Oro's attention. While searching for him, Oro stumbles across Ryu's old rival Akuma, who has been honing his deadly skills for an eventual rematch with Ryu. Oro marvels at Akuma's intense evil powers and compliments him for attaining it while being so young, but is disturbed by Akuma's claim of being a master of fists and offers to fight him in the hopes of showing him what a true mastery of fighting is like. The two clash in a fierce battle, but ultimately agree to a stalemate, fearing that if they continued, both men would die. The two warriors go their separate ways, but Oro in particular shows some worry over Akuma's strength combined with his evil intent. Sometime later, Oro balances a boulder with one hand as he shows his joy at having to once again train seriously, not having done so for 50 years. Oro expresses the youthful energy he feels upon seeing Ryu, and notes that he won't be bored while training him. At the same time, Ryu continues his training by balancing a large boulder on his back, but is seemingly unaware of Oro's presence and his desire to train him. Ryu shrugs off Oro's voice as his imagination and resumes his training. Oro continues to observe Ryu's training, hoping that Ryu will eventually become so strong that Oro will have to use both of his arms, though he notes that it would take at least 15 years for Ryu to reach that level. After his stalemate with Oro, Akuma resumes his training, this time submerging himself deep underwater. After coming across a patrolling deep-sea boat, Akuma presumably destroys it, as radio operators on board a large ship try to figure out what happened. Suddenly, Akuma uses his Demon Armageddon Ultra combo to launch himself and the remains of a crashed submarine out of the water. As he returns home after his match with Ryu, Ken hears rumours about the organisation behind the Third World Warrior Tournament the previous year, mostly about their powerful fighters. Deciding to investigate the rumours, Ken eventually comes across Urien, president of the Illuminati and brother to its Emperor Gil, who hosted the previous tournament. Ken is surprised at Urien being one of the people he had heard about, but notes that he has the face of a fighter. Urien, an asshole as ever, berates Ken for his lax behaviour around the King of the New Century, and that he should feel lucky for being allowed to entertain him. The two exchange more verbal jabs before fighting, though the winner is unknown. Given Ken isn't killed or captured by the Illuminati, it's safe to assume that he defeated Urien and returned home, content with not interfering in the secret society's business. Upon returning home, Ken is greeted by Sean Matsuda, who has returned to Ken to fulfill his promise to test him after 1 year of training. Ken, seemingly not as desperate to get rid of Sean anymore, agrees to spar with him one more time. Ken informs Sean of the rules of the match, telling him that he must use his own special moves and strategies, to not copy Ken and to simply impress him and not try to win, though he can try to win a round if he sees an opportunity to, if he can of course. Sean promises Ken that he's not the same person that he was a year ago, and that he'll impress him enough to take him on as an apprentice. The two begin their sparring match, and once again the winner is oh man, I can't lie to you like that. Of course Ken won. However, Sean's year of training pays off as Ken decides that the fiery young fighter has what it takes to be trained by him. Officially taking him on as an apprentice, Ken takes Sean and his family to that year's United States Martial Arts Tournament and enters both of them. Sean at first thinks that he has won the tournament and happily cheers at him finally being as good as his master and achieving his dream. However, Sean eventually comes to and realises that he was brutally defeated in his first match and didn't even qualify. Ken sits by his student's side as he tells Sean that he didn't train hard enough and should try harder next time. Sean is despondent over his victory being a dream and exits the tournament. Sean sticks around for the rest of the US Martial Arts Tournament and watches with Eliza and Mel as Ken works his way to the finals and wins. As the crowd and Ken's family celebrate his third consecutive victory in the tournament, Ken tries to give confused Sean his trophy, thinking that Sean simply wanted it for himself. Sean quickly corrects Ken and tells him that when he said he wanted the trophy, he wanted it through winning it by his own fighting ability, and that it is meaningless if he did not win it through his own efforts. Ken, his family and Sean laugh at the confusion as Ken tells Sean that he shouldn't worry too much about winning the trophy himself someday, but should instead focus on getting past the qualifying rounds, though that won't mean much as Sean will be unable to win the tournament until he beats Ken himself. Moving on from the Shotos and their related characters, let's move on to the characters who have no real ties to each other or the main plot of Street Fighter 3, once again starting with everyone's favourite gentleman boxer, Dudley. Since regaining his father's prize car from the hands of Gil in the previous tournament, Dudley's fortune has grown more and more as he is said to be knighted by the royal family and becomes Sir Dudley. However, the royal family requests that Dudley perform in a boxing contest to be held in front of them at his knighting. Wanting to hone his fighting skills in preparation for the contest, Dudley and his butler Ortho K. Gotch travel around the world taking on as many opponents as possible. Eventually Dudley comes across Ryu and introduces himself, having heard of him as the infamous samurai fighter. To Dudley's surprise and mine, Ryu has also heard of Dudley and wishes to take on England's #1 boxer. Dudley is absolutely chuffed with Ryu's gentleman behaviour and agrees to a fight. The winner of the fight is unknown, you're going to hear that a lot by the way, but regardless of who won, Dudley is pleased with his around the world training regimen and returns home to prepare for the contest. On the day of said contest, Dudley wanders in his family's garden as he tends to the many flowers, noting how their beauty soothes him. Koch approaches Dudley and reminds him that the contest and knighting ceremony are due to begin soon. Upon being told when the ceremony starts, Dudley begins to panic and tells Koch that they have to hurry as they only have 5 hours to return to the mansion due to them standing in the middle of an unrealistically huge garden maze. In the years since the previous tournament, Elena has left Japan to study abroad in France. As she sits in a cafe, Elena writes to a friend Narumi about her travels in France and memories of their time in Japan. Elena finishes her letter by inviting Narumi's family to Elena's home in Kenya and heads off to continue her studying. After the successful completion of her mission during the tournament the previous year, Ibuki gets ready to complete her ninja training and graduate from the Glade of Ninjas. Growing tired of the intense ninja training and lifestyle, Ibuki anticipates graduating due to her enrolling in university afterwards, where she hopes to have a normal life. As part of her graduation, Ibuki must set out into the world and defeat a Sennin, someone who is a master of their fighting style. While on her travels, Ibuki eventually comes across Oro and asks him if he's a Sennin. Oro is at first enthusiastic towards Ibuki, but becomes disappointed when she reveals that she must defeat him in order to graduate, with Oro assuming that Ibuki had wanted to go on a date with him. Oro nonetheless accepts and takes Ibuki on in a fight. The nature of the fight is unknown, and given that Ibuki later graduates, we can assume that she was able to defeat Oro, though it's probable that he let her win. Having successfully completed her mission and graduated from the Glade of Ninjas, Ibuki finally enrolls at a university in Japan, where she hopes to live life as an ordinary girl. Upon being smitten with an upperclassman called Senpai, yes, his name is actually Senpai, Ibuki is convinced to enroll in his club. However, the club is actually a ninjutsu club, and Senpai puts Ibuki through a rigorous and deadly training regimen, much to her dismay as she realises that she isn't free from the life of a ninja just yet. A year after his defeat at the hands of Ryu in the Third World Warrior tournament, Hugo and his manager Poison have abandoned the Capcom Wrestling Association and plan to start their own wrestling promotion. Wanting to build a strong roster of capable fighters, Hugo and Poison travel the world and challenge dozens of fighters with their guaranteed allegiance to the new promotion if they lose. While challenging potential superstars, Hugo and Poison once again run into Ryu and try to recruit him, still seeing potential in him to become a great wrestler. Ryu, again hoping to gain something from experiencing other fighting styles, agrees to a fight where he once again is able to defeat Hugo. Despite their loss, Hugo and Poison remain undeterred from their goal and continue the hunt for more potential talent. Deciding to strike, Hugo and Poison invade during a CWA match and declare war on the promotion. Using the fighters they had scouted to form the huge wrestling army, Poison declares the CWA their property and challenges anyone to take on Hugo to get it back. Now, quick note, this ending is obviously non-canon due to the likes of Ryu, Alex and Gil being in the HWA, but I think by removing them from the scenario you can make this ending fit into the overall narrative of the game. If you disagree with my decision here, feel free to let me know why and I'll make an update on it. After the death of her father, Makoto's Rindokan Karate Family Dojo was floundering. With her older brother having left to become a businessman and her grandfather too old to take the reins, Makoto takes it upon herself to fight the strongest fighters in the world in order to get her dojo back to its former glory. While out in the world, Makoto meets Elena but is disturbed by her cheerfulness. Initially thinking that Elena is making fun of her, Makoto was baffled when Elena tells her of her desire to simply make friends, telling her that she'll never understand her. The two fight, but the winner is you know what, let's just assume Makoto won, it'll be easier at this point. Makoto takes on and defeats several more fighters, but finds that they are not high profile enough to get her dojo back into the public eye. Deciding she must set her heights higher, Makoto heads directly for the most well-known fighter in the world, Ryu. Upon meeting Ryu, the two exchange brief words before taking each other on. The winner is, once again unknown, with a reputation of taking on so many fighters as well as her bout with Ryu has done the help needed to return Makoto's dojo to its rightful state. As the word spreads of Makoto's strength and status as a young master of the Rindokan karate style, hundreds of hopeful fighters gather at the dojo to take on Makoto as she absolutely steamrolls anyone foolish enough to take her on. As Makoto takes on as many fighters as she can, her brother and grandfather organise the large lines outside as they marvel at the dojo's popularity since Makoto's return. Makoto's brother plans to go on a trip and leaves the fate of the dojo in Makoto's care, deciding that she is more than worthy of carrying on their father's legacy. After his father abandoned him and his sister at a young age to pursue the life of a wandering fighter, a young man named Remy develops a strong hatred of his father and grows to distrust fighters and those who pursue the path of the warrior. When Remy's sister dies of an incurable disease, his mind snaps and his dislike of his father and fighters turns into full-blown hatred, with him wishing death upon any who willingly choose the lifestyle. With nothing left to live for and an intense desire to punish those who call themselves warriors, Remy encases his sister's body in a block of ice underneath the Bay of Biscay and becomes a wandering fighter himself in the hopes of one day encountering his father and killing him. While Remy's main goal is finding his father, his journey comes with the added bonus of punishing those who are fighters, with Remy even calling the police to arrest any fighter who he manages to defeat. While wandering his native home of France, Remy encounters Alex, who has spent the last year travelling the world and taking on any strong fighters that challenge him. Upon meeting Alex, Remy finds him to be the personification of everything he hates about fighters. Remy questions Alex on what his reasons are for fighting, and when Alex replies that he simply doesn't know why, Remy begins to lambast him, telling him that those who call themselves warriors are the ones who destroy families, just like his father. Alex, now angered by Remy's accusations and time wasting, promises to make him feel the pain he seems to seek, and the two fight. Given he isn't arrested in this game, Alex promptly proceeds to beat the shit out of Remy, and leaves him to continue his self-destructive path. Alex's beatdown seems to awaken something in Remy as he puts his quest of vengeance on hold and returns to the Bay of Biscay to visit his sister's body. As he swims to the cavern where her body is held, Remy deduces that due to the tides becoming more violent, he will be unable to visit his sister anymore. Remy realizes that by being so blinded by his desire for revenge that he became a warrior, and thus more like his father, the one he hated more than anything. Though he can't forgive his father just yet, Remy decides that he must let go of his past in order to start anew, and releases his sister's icy tomb where it floats to the bottom of the ocean. As he leaves the cavern, Remy sees a light in the distance. Mesmerized by the light, Remy walks towards it in order to discover its meaning. A group of 3 CIA agents sit in a dark room as they go over dozens of photographs captured around the world. As they go through the photos, one of the agents points out the same person in every picture, a man in a trench coat with an iron mask. The agents decide to send pictures of the mysterious man to all of their branches in the hopes of finding out his true identity. As the agents leave, a shadow matching the man follows them out of the room, revealing that he was present the entire time. A nearby article names him as Robo-Decker Q, but we simply know him as Q. So who or what is Q? I'll cover this in depth in a later video, so for now we'll leave this mysterious man and move on. So with the unaffiliated characters out of the way, let's move on to the Illuminati and those who continue to fight against them. After Shadowloo's destruction several years prior and her father's death avenged, Interpol agent Chun-Li makes her peace and retires from street fighting. Having taken in a young girl kidnapped by Shadowloo named Li Fen, Chun-Li decides to devote her time to teaching martial arts to orphan children. Having missed the Third World Warrior tournament due to her desire to teach children, Chun-Li's peaceful life is broken when Li Fen is kidnapped by the Illuminati to be used in their numerous experiments. Determined to not let any of the children under her care be harmed, Chun-Li once again dons her iconic chi-pow and sets out into the world to rescue Li Fen. Upon starting her investigation, Chun-Li hears of the secret society and deduces that they are the ones that have captured Li Fen. After chasing down numerous leads, Chun-Li eventually gains an audience with the society's president Urien, who has Li Fen in his custody. Chun-Li is disgusted by Urien's attempts to kidnap a child and demands to know where Li Fen is, but Urien's pompous attitude makes him appalled at having to meet Chun-Li over a trifle thing. Urien, however, has heard of Chun-Li and asks her to fight him using the legs that help destroy Shadowloo. The two fight for the possession of Li Fen, and Chun-Li comes out victorious. Urien quickly flees as the police arrive to intercept him, but Urien gets away. Chun-Li is reunited with Li Fen and comforts her as they return home. 6 months after rescuing Li Fen, Chun-Li, having realised what her true fight is, continues to train her and the other orphans with the goal of building a better tomorrow, doing so to honour her father. Deciding that the true purpose of her life is to train and take care of the children, Chun-Li vows to keep fighting for the future. After escaping from the clutches of the Illuminati at the conclusion of the previous tournament, Necro and Effie have been on the run for a year, travelling from town to town while dodging Illuminati agents. While travelling through his home country of Russia, Necro and Effie are ambushed by the latest experiment of the Illuminati, the apex of the G project and the fruits of Necro's tortures, 12. Deemed to be the perfect weapon by his creators, 12 is able to mould its body into any conceivable shape, including other people. Having chased Necro and Effie for days, the two eventually clash, and Necro is forced to defend himself. Necro begs 12 to just leave him alone, but the mimetic creation coldly tells Necro that the experiments done to him by the Society are considered evidence of their existence, and that he can never be allowed to make himself known to the public. Declaring that it's up to each individual person to decide whether they should exist or not, Necro fights 12 and manages to defeat it. With 12 momentarily incapacitated, Necro and Effie once again flee and ride a train out of Russia. However, they are soon intercepted by more Illuminati agents who chase the two to the roof of the train. As the two are cornered by the agents, Necro grabs Effie and takes a leap of faith off the train. While Necro is able to hold on to the bridge to prevent himself from falling, Effie plummets to the bottom of the chasm beneath them. As she falls, Necro uses his elongated arms to stretch down to Effie and grab her just in time. Having rescued his love, Necro for the first time in his life feels thankful for the abilities his new body provides him. Having failed in its mission to neutralize Necro, 12 is returned to the Illuminati's labs where Urien's chief scientist Dr. Cure watches over it and the hundreds of 12 copies that are being made. As Dr. Cure and his assistants marvel at 12's regenerative ability, he wonders what 12 is dreaming of before dismissing the idea, saying that it does not have the ability to dream. Once he is gone, however, 12 opens its normally hollow eyes to reveal that they've become crimson, possibly hinting that it has become sentient. Since their defeat in the tournament the previous year, brothers Yun and Yang Li continue to defend their town and friends from any possible threats. Soon after the tournament is over, however, they begin hearing rumours about the true intent of the tournament's organiser. Deciding that this person is a threat to their town and everyone in it, a hot-headed Yun sets out to confront him, while Yang reluctantly tags along to keep his brother in check. The two eventually manage to find Gil and confront him. Yun admonishes Gil's plans for world domination, but Gil tries to sway Yun and Yang's young minds to accept him as the one fit enough to lead their way of life. The brothers refuse to believe him and decide to take on Gil in a fight. They are able to defeat him, though it is extremely likely Gil let the brothers win as to not disrupt his plans. Gil compliments the two on their fighting and allows Yun and Yang to have control of their town while serving underneath the Illuminati. Yun once again berates Gil for his idiotic plan and tells him to give it up. Gil once again tries to convince the two that Gil's goal is the most ideal for humanity, but accepts the two's decision to refuse his offer. Deciding to educate the brothers, Gil then explains that two opposite powers have been with humanity since the dawn of time, such as life and death and love and hate. Gil warns the two that the balance between these powers will collapse in the near future, and that Gil wishes to combine them in order to prevent this. In terms of how Gil plans to do this, we have to look at his ending, which is one of the non-canon ones I talked about earlier. Normally I would ignore this ending, but it does give us a good look at what Gil's intent is, so we'll look at it under the context of it being Gil's plan. After luring Alex to him, Gil would confront his nemesis and defeat him in a fight. Alex's importance to Gil is never revealed, but it is implied by Gil that the two's destinies are intertwined, and thus Alex is needed to complete Gil's plans. Upon defeating Alex, Gil would then use his powers to unlock the hidden potential within him, allowing him to use the same dual fire and ice powers that Gil possesses. After this, Gil would lead those he deems are worthy of salvation, with Alex by his side. Promising his flock true paradise, Gil would part the seas and lead them to an island, half red and half blue, where he will combine the two opposing powers and prevent the world's collapse. Though he does not reveal the latter parts of his plan to Yun and Yang, Gil wonders how those who fight against him will survive the upcoming destruction prophesied by the Illuminati, and that he will enjoy finding out their fates. Gil then promptly vanishes, leaving Yun and Yang to ponder over his warnings. Yang voices his concerns over what Gil said, but Yun dismisses his worries and reminds him that they lead their own town and that they won't let Gil do whatever he wants to their family and friends. Deciding to take their own path in life, the two return home. As they return home, Yang stops Yun and challenges him to a fight. Young is confused as to why Yang cares so much about which one of them is stronger, but Yang wants to show his brother how much progress he's made in the last few weeks. Young begrudgingly accepts Yang's request, but promises to show his brother the walls that block him from surpassing him. The two engage in a fight, and the winner is unknown, though it's assumed Yun once again surpassed Yang. As they return home, the two brothers begin arguing as their friends Hoi Mei and Xiao Mei try to get them to stop. Hoi Mei tells the two that they should be more worried about protecting their town rather than bickering, and begins arguing with Yun about how worried she's been. Yang becomes despondent as he realises that Hoi Mei is in love with Yun, and that his brothers once again gained another victory over him, with Yang having had a crush on Hoi Mei. Xiao Mei explains to Yang that her sister was just worried about the two of them, but has a hard time expressing her relief at their safe return. Xiao Mei asks Yang to be a little less reckless in the future, telling him that though she cares about the town, she cares more about the two brothers. Yang and Xiao Mei leave together as Yun is admonished by Hoi Mei for his reckless behaviour. As they leave, Xiao Mei admits to herself that she needs to also be more open about her feelings, hinting that she herself is in love with Yang. After his defeat by Chun-Li, Yuri returns to the Illuminati headquarters where he once again confronts his brother and Emperor Gil. The two immediately begin squabbling, with Gil's constant holier than God complex reigniting Yuri's hatred of his brother and place in the society. Wanting to be free of Gil's corruption and overbearing self-righteousness, Yuri challenges his brother to a fight to the death. The winner of the fight is unknown, but enough damage is done to Gil for him to retire to a recuperation pod. While Gil sleeps in the pod, Yuri visits his brother and looks at the intelligence the Illuminati have collected over their 2,000 years of existence, seeing them as ugly and useless masses of junk with no ability to make any difference towards Urian's goals. Urian watches his brother heal in the pod as he wonders if he's dreaming of his ideal world being made. Seeing his chance to finally succeed Gil, Urian overrules the AI running the healing pods and activates the tower's self-destruct sequence. Leaving Gil inside the tower to his death, Urian laughs manically as it explodes. With no legacy or prophecy for him to succeed, Urian establishes this moment the start of the new era, henceforth dubbed After Urian. Whether Gil survived the explosion or not is unknown, but given Gil's highly powerful resurrection secret art, it is likely he managed to escape death once again. Now, the nature of this ending is completely unknown in regards to it being canon, with most people outright feeling that it doesn't happen, but given we've yet to move past Third Strike in the timeline, I feel like it's worth mentioning in the outcome that Capcom decided to factor this ending into a Street Fighter game that takes place after 3. Since his victory in the Third World Warrior tournament, Alex has spent the last year travelling the world and fighting strong opponents. With thoughts of revenge against Gil no longer clouding his mind, Alex has stayed relatively away from the Illuminati and its followers. After defeating the likes of fighters like Remy, Alex eventually encounters a man that he has heard about from rumours and legends. Noticing the classic karate gi and red headband, Alex correctly identifies him as Ryu. Wanting to confirm the rumours for himself, Alex challenges Ryu to a fight, which Ryu gladly accepts, seeing the power in Alex's eyes. The two fighters clash, the leader of the new generation versus the legendary World Warrior. Ultimately, Ryu's skill and seasoned experience gives him the victory, with Alex being unable to counter a single of his blows, and him realising that Ryu's reputation does no justice towards his actual strength. Sometime later, Alex writes a letter home to Tom and Patricia, who are preparing for an upcoming camping trip with Alex. Tom reads the letter as Alex apologises for not being able to make the trip, as his fight with Ryu has made him obsessed with fighting him again. Promising to catch up with his family later, Tom realises that Alex no longer sees him as an equal opponent and looks forward to seeing how strong he has become the next time they meet. After their match, Ryu challenges Alex again, asking him if that's all he's got. An eager and determined Alex rises to his feet once again, boldly claiming that the show has just begun. With this, a new rivalry is born, the events of the Street Fighter 3 series concludes, and we reach the current end of the Street Fighter timeline. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
We await your return, warrior.